got a confession to make. I'm part of the 18.3% of women that have cheated on their husbands. Actually, let me rephrase that. I'm actually 18.3% of the women that have actually admitted to cheating on their husband. Now, okay, it wasn't the proudest moment of my life, and it certainly wasn't a moment of greatness. Now, for those of you that are maybe judging me right now, I totally get why. Because you know what? The one woman that managed to judge that lady over there was me. There was nobody else in the world that judged her as harshly as I did. Now, for those of you in the room that have been cheated on, for those of you that are thinking about it, for those of you that have done so, let me tell you something that I realized. There's a bigger reason why this goes on. And you know what that is? It's the pursuit of happiness. I want you to imagine for a moment a hot, muggy day in a capital city of the United States of America on the East Coast in 2006. My ex-husband, well, actually he was my husband then, but my ex-husband and I decided to meet in the park to finally face the truth of something that we'd been in denial about for about 6 months. And as I walked into the park, he turned around and looked at me. And I stared into his eyes. And usually, you know, those eyes were full of love and kindness. But today, they were full of hatred, disdain, and even disgust. And I walked closer to him. And what I realized is that he had these papers in his hand. And I was thinking to myself, what are those papers? Oh my God, I thought. Those are the emails I'd been sending my friends about how confused I was, about how can I be married to this man when I'm actually in love, maybe with somebody else. But you see, at the time, I didn't have the understanding that I do now. And as I got closer to him, he started shouting and screaming and said, "How could you have done this to us? Who are you? I don't even recognize who you are! Why have you done this?" And all I could do is just stand there, shaking, not even knowing what to say. And I wasn't ready for what was just about to come out of his mouth. I want a divorce. Now, that day, even as horrible as it was, even though that we had to face that horrible truth about our relationship and about what had happened, I look back on that day now and I think to myself, you know what? That was a real gift because he really set me free. I finally got to understand that he couldn't make me happy. The guy that I was having an affair couldn't make me happy either. That happiness had to come from me. And the actual fact is, by actually letting me go, I managed to find it. So my question to you ladies today is, why can't that be you? And you know what? It can be. But you know what? Going through a divorce and a breakup, it's not easy, right? It's bloody hard. And we've got to make sure that we use whatever we can to get through it. And one of the many things that got me through was a quote by Winston Churchill. And I loved it because it really just sums it up for me. And it was, "If you're going through hell, just keep going." Now, that was the voice that was in my head at the time. I know it sounds a bit weird, but that was what I heard in my head. You see, after the incident, I hit rock bottom. I had no place to go. My friends had turned their back on me, and I had no family to turn to. You know, the city wasn't even my own. I wasn't even in my own country. So I had to make do with what I got. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I turned into somebody I didn't even recognize. Like I looked at myself in the mirror and went, oh my God, who is that mad woman? Who have I turned into? Because I started drinking like 2 bottles of wine a day. I started smoking 2 packets of cigarettes daily. And the oddest thing is, I didn't even smoke. I smoked so much that my tongue went black. And then I got addicted to one of the most powerful things on the planet. Psychics. I know, right? Pretty crazy. But they were like having a warm bath for me by the end of the day. Each day, I honestly didn't think I was going to make it through. And for me, they were like the reward. And although I spent probably about £5,000 in that 1 year on their advice, it was like a respite from the hell that I was living in. Because you know what? They painted such a beautiful picture of what my life was going to turn out like versus what was going on in my head. I had all these voices going, you'll never find anybody else. You're not good enough. You're not worthy of love. I had those voices to contend with. I could tell you it wasn't easy, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So, as you've probably guessed, I used some interesting strategies to get through this really, really hard time. But you know what? You girls are so lucky because there are some incredible people out there. That there are some people who can really help you with the resources and really streamline the process. The fact that you're even here today is so cool because I didn't have those resources. I had to kind of find my own way, muddle through it myself. And so one day when it got so bad, I decided to admit myself into hospital. Now imagine this, a cold, clinical hospital, smelling of urine and detergent, and I was so scared. And anyway, I sat myself down and I looked at the floor and I just thought to myself, Marina, how the hell did you get here again? You see, this wasn't the first time that I admitted myself into hospital. This was the second time. 10 years previously, the same thing had happened to me before. Anyway, I don't know how many hours had passed. I was just sitting there, just in my own world. You know how it is? Like, just time goes by and you don't even realize it. And suddenly I heard, Miss Pearson? That's my American accent, so just bear with me for a bit. So I walked into the surgery, I sat myself down, and I honestly didn't realize or expect what he was just about to tell me. And when he did, it just sent shivers down my spine. Turned around, he said, Miss Pearson, you do know that because you've admitted yourself here today, we can't let you out until we know you're going to be okay. If we deem you as insane, we're going to have to take you to the psych ward. Oh my God. You know what was going on in my head at the time? It was like, have you ever watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Yeah, the mental institution he gets himself into, that horrible, smelly institution. Well, that's the image that was conjured up in my mind. And from deep within, I suddenly heard this voice that said, sober up, bitch, and get the fuck out of here. And 20 minutes later, that's exactly what happened. I managed to turn it around. You know what I learned that day? I learned that it's not about resources. It's about being resourceful and having resourcefulness. Each and every one of you in this room today has got what it takes to get over your ex. Now, I've worked with lots of clients, and when I was going through it, I had some wonderful behaviors. I call them wonderful behaviors because, well, they're pretty much behaviors that happen when you are a little bit emotional. I found that, when your emotions are high, your intelligence is actually quite low. And one of these behaviors that I see and that I've experienced myself is that behavior called judgment. Yeah? That sort of wiggling the finger and, what you've done to me. And so I want to take you back to a moment in 1995. I want you to imagine two teenage girls who were really excited because today was the day they were going to go and have their first sauna. Yep. We'd never actually had a sauna before, so we were kind of like sauna virgins. Now, I don't know if you know, but in Switzerland and Germany, they like to go naked. So we were going hardcore. So off we went, really excited about going to the sauna. And we got to the changing rooms, we got changed, and we put the towels around us, and we walked confidently into the sauna. And suddenly we got really nervous about taking our towels off because, of course, we didn't have anything underneath. And we started a little game. And it was like, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. And I did the only thing that a good friend could do. And that was to pull her towel down. But I wasn't expecting to see what I saw. Oh my God! An orange bush. I was like, I didn't realise that you got your hair dyed. She started laughing and, of course, we just sat down and started giggling. And we started sweating, but not because it was hot in there, but out of the nerves, actually. We were kind of a little bit awkward, like orange bush and naked, and we're a little bit clumsy. And 45 minutes go by, and I'm like, Jessica, this isn't really working for me. It's a little bit cold in here, don't you think? She's like, yeah, this isn't really what I expected. And I was like, nah, this isn't what I expected either. And we were like, well, maybe we should go and ask, and, is this sauna actually working? But we were too embarrassed to ask. So we just sat there. And suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a guy sitting there. And he got up and he sauntered over to us and he says, in his German accent, "Are you looking for the sauna?" And we were like, what a dickhead, right? Looking for the sauna. No, of course not. What's so stupid? And he goes, well, the sauna is round the corner. You are in the chill-out room. Yeah, right? We've been sitting there for 45 minutes. And what turned out to be the stupid guy was the guy that really wanted to help us out. So my question to you is, where have you misinterpreted your ex's actions? Maybe he's been wanting to help you out, but the judgment maybe has been stopping you from being able to see that. So, but I've learned along the way that in life, if there's a problem, there has to be a solution. And well, there's going to be a solution to your problem. And the solution that I found that really works is giving yourself some time to heal. Giving some time to you. And so, last year around 2000, I think it was in March of 2011, that's right. The guy that I was with at the time decided to leave. I was on holiday, and well, he didn't exactly do it very nicely. He did it over Skype. And I got home, and he'd already left. Not only did he leave a really massive hole in my heart, but he also left a really massive hole in my dream. And that dream for me was to become a mother. Now, during that time, I thought, you know what? It's time. It's time for me to tie up some loose ends. It's time for me to finally get back in contact with my ex-husband. And so I did. And I'd totally forgotten I'd done this. And 3 months later, I get an email. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. You know, have you ever been in that situation where you've forgotten about something and suddenly it shows up and you're like, oh my gosh, what to do? So I did the only thing that a woman in that situation would do. I got my friend to open the email. Yeah. And I sat there with anticipation. And I wasn't expecting what she was about to tell me. He was getting married. Yeah. And weirdly enough, it just brought up all of this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I thought I was so over it. You know, I'd like done so much stuff on it and I'd done all of this exercises and breakthroughs. And I was still like, oh my God, I'm still in that place. So ladies, I'm sure you'll understand my actions a little bit more when I tell you that I had to go on Facebook and started stalking him. Well, actually, just to see what she looked like, you know, the comparison game. I wouldn't recommend it. But if you ask me, would I do it again? Yeah, I would. I would definitely do it again. Because it was the catalyst, actually, towards releasing the negative emotions that I was feeling. And for me to get this lesson. But before I tell you about the lesson, I want to share with you what happened. And I decided to go and do some of my energy work on myself. A technique that I'll be showing you later in the program. And what happened was that as I started to release, something extraordinary happened. And the guy, well, actually a friend of mine that I've kind of become a little bit attracted to, Skyped me. Now I know, this is not exactly the weirdest thing to happen. We all use Skype, right? But what was extraordinary about this was that he had been keeping me at arm's length. He'd been together with his girlfriend at the time, but they weren't necessarily going through a great patch. And he knew that we were kind of attracted to one another. But the minute I released those negative emotions, bam, he showed up. 3 days later, we went out for dinner. And we've been together ever since. So you know what I learned? You know what I realized that day? It is so important to make sure that you get rid of the old so that you can bring in the new. You know, it's like having your wardrobe full of old, dirty, manky clothes that you don't want to wear anymore, mainly black, of course, maybe, and going out and buying yourself some beautiful clothes. And you get to your home and your wardrobe's full, but you have no place to put those other beautiful dresses you've just bought. So this is your time. This is the moment that you have to gift yourself to heal. And what I've learned is that there's really no point in harboring all of those negative emotions, because you never know when you might. And you know what? What I've learned is that there's no point in harboring those negative emotions, because what's the point of living with regret? So in 2008, I got myself into a new relationship. And that relationship was with my father. Now I know you're probably wondering, what the hell are you talking about? Relationship with your father? Well, my father and I hadn't necessarily been all that close. There was a massive age gap. He was 60 years older than I was. Yes, do the math. He had me when he was 60 years old. And I was his only daughter. And he had a very traditional upbringing. Oh, commander of the Navy. And he wasn't around a lot, so we never really connected all that well. Now, I'm sure you can relate to this. Have you ever been embarrassed by your parents? Yeah? Well, I sure as hell was. He used to turn up to my boarding school in his slippers, sometimes, in his dressing gown, other times. But if I got really lucky, he'd turn up without his false teeth. Yeah, he was some kind of character. So around about 2010, I started to spend a lot more time with him, and we got to know each other really well. And I got to spend Christmas with him, and it was really cool because he started to really open up and share some really cool stuff with me that he'd never shared with me before. And I wasn't expecting the call. January of 2011, I got the call from my sister, and she said, "Marina, you've got to go to the hospital. It's time. He's got pneumonia." So I got in the car, I went down to the hospital, and I wasn't expecting what I saw there. Nurses coming in and out. My dad confused because when you've got pneumonia, you can't actually breathe properly. You're not getting enough oxygen to the head. So he didn't know whether he was coming or going. One moment he was up, one moment he was down, one moment he didn't know who I was, one minute he did, one minute he was hungry, the next minute he wasn't. And this went throughout the entire day. Confused, 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 until 7 p.m. when I realized that it was just him and me in the room. He was sitting on the chair, and I decided to just sit on his bed and just held his hand. We were watching the TV, and I was just thinking, wow, what a beautiful moment. It's just... And then I realized that his hand had gone weak. And I turned around, and what I thought was him sleeping, I realized was his last breath. But you know what? It was beautiful. Because there was nothing left to say. There was no regret. We'd made our peace. So if there's anything that I've learned, make sure you make peace with those people in your life before the hand goes weak. Thank you.